Welcome to Train Signal. You're watching Bringing an OU and Users Back from the Dead. How to restore individual organizational units and user accounts after they've been deleted. This will be an important skill for when people do bad things to your Active Directory. In this video, we're going to start off with, okay, who killed off the ops department? In which we're going to describe to you a potential situation that you might actually see. Then I'm going to talk to you about the two types of restorations. We're going to start off by talking about Windows Server Backup to do what we call a non-authoritative restoration. We'll talk about what that means. And then we'll also talk about how to use NTDS util and WBadmin to do an authoritative restoration. Now, obviously, using Windows Server Backup is going to be a little faster and simpler, but not as comprehensive. Whereas the NTDS util and WBadmin combination is going to take just a little bit more time, but quite frankly, it's not that hard, okay? Then the last section on this particular video, I want to talk to you about how to put resurrected users back into groups using backlinks. Now, this one I'm not going to do a demonstration because this particular section is only valid if you're running a Windows Server 2000 functional level. Now, I won't be able to actually demonstrate it for you because, well, the fact of the matter is we're running Windows 2008 functional level, and, well, it just won't work. But I'm including this in this particular video for two reasons. Number one, for exam reasons, just in case you get hit with a question about restoring backlinks. And two, maybe you're in a Windows Server 2000 functional level and you don't know why because all of your domain controllers are Server 2003 or higher. And it might be something you might have to do. So it's kind of one of those just-in-case type of sections, just so you have the information, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and let's start off by talking about, well, who killed off the ops department. And the thing of it is that everything's going well until on the Tuesday morning, the entire New York ops department can no longer log in. So what do? First of all, you go see what's going on in your Active Directory, right? And you notice that the New York ops OU is, well, it's just gone. It's missing. It doesn't exist anymore. And, well, that's obviously not good. So you go back, and because we enabled auditing, right? Since we enabled auditing, we go onto the security log, and we see that the account B. Sampson, which is an account belonging to one of your new New York IT staff, and we gave Brock Sampson the account operator permissions. Well, it turns out that Brock successfully deleted the entire OU last night at 1 a.m. Well, evidently after he left, Brock also was brought into police custody for other chemically related issues, and I think that's self-explanatory. So that obviously is a problem, but fortunately at midnight, a system state backup of your entire domain controller was successfully completed. So here's the thing. We need to restore the ops organizational unit for New York due to Brock's drug-induced mayhem. So here's what we need to do. All right. First of all, we need to decide what kind of restoration we're going to do. We're going to do one of these two types. So the first option is to use what we call a non-authoritative restore. Now, here's what you can do with this. You can use Windows Server Backup. You can restore the entire domain controller, and it'll be back. But since it's non-authoritative and it was last night, well, the users will initially be able to log in as soon as the restoration process finishes. However, the other domain controllers in your domain have the New York Ops organizational unit marked as deleted, and that's a problem. So in that case, what we really need to do is we really need to do it in what we call an authoritative restore. Okay, now this one is a little more complex. You're going to use the WBadmin tools and NTDS util. Now I've given you a brief introduction to these previously, but using these two tools in conjunction with a system state backup, by the way, you have to have at least a system state backup in order to do these restorations. But using that, you can restore an organizational unit, you can restore an individual user account or accounts as the case may be. Actually, really any other AD object after doing a system state restore. Then we mark the units that we restored, like the organizational unit or the users, we mark them as authoritative. Let me tell you what that means and what does it mean for a restore to be authoritative. Okay, well, every object has what we call an update sequence number. And the update sequence number for each object basically lets all the domain controllers know which object has been most recently updated. When we mark a unit as authoritatively restored, what ends up happening, as you see circled here, is that the update sequence number gets increased by 10,000 so that all the other domain controllers know that, hey, this is the object that you need to pay attention to and you need to replicate and copy into your database. You can ignore every other copy that's flown around out there in other domain controllers, okay? So really what it boils down to is this update sequence number. This is what makes an authoritative restore authoritative. Now, here's how we do both, okay? To run a non-authoritative restore, this one's super easy, and this is just the one option, by the way. You go to Windows Server Backup, you click Recover. Yeah, I know, it really is that easy. You use the most recent backup file set that was created before the deletion of the objects, and you're done. But I want you to remember that if you have multiple domain controllers in your domain, and if enough time has passed and that deletion has replicated out to all of the other domain controllers, well, you might end up having problems. So depending upon the length of time and what your replication schedule is and all that, you might need to run an authoritative restore, making sure that those update sequence numbers, or USNs, are all up to date. Or actually, I should say marked as authoritative by increasing that value by 10,000. Now, the process is a little more complex, a little more involved, not that bad though. And so let me walk you through the steps. Now, by the way, I'm kind of including these steps in here in these slides, mostly so you can have them after you watch the videos. Okay, I'm going to walk you through each of these steps though. First of all, you restart the domain controller into what we call domain recovery mode, okay? And in order to get it into domain services recovery mode, you hit F8 on the keyboard during the reboot to get to the option for this. Then you log in with /administrator and the domain recovery mode password you set up when you ran DC promo. You remember that way back when? And preferably you're using the same domain recovery password on all of your domain controllers. Then you type wb-admin get versions -backup target, and then you put in the backup location. Now the backup location marked here in red, this is where your backup files live, or at least at the very least, your system state backup files live. You figure out which version you want to restore, making sure you pick a version before the deletion point, okay? Then you actually run a system state recovery. And it's pretty easy. I'll show you how to do it. You just type in wb-admin start system state recovery, all one word, -version. This ID you're going to figure out back in step 3, okay? So you're going to figure that out here. Then you're going to put in the backup target and then the same backup location as what you put in here. Then after the restoration, then we're going to go into NTDS util. We're going to activate the instance of NTDS, and you can run that all as one command, by the way. All right, then once we're into the NTDS util, we type authoritative restore to get into the right NTDS util. Well, remember we call those context, right? Depending upon what context of NTDS util we're in, we get different sets of commands for specific purposes. Then we type restore object, then we put inside of quotes the object's distinguished name. Now remember, the distinguished name for an object is that OU equals the name, DC equals, yada yada, Now we would just do object distinguished name for a single account. So for a single account, we're going to use restore object. Now if we're restoring an entire OU, we're going to type restore subtree and then the distinguished name for that particular organizational unit. And I'll show you what that's going to look like here in just a little bit. Then after we're done doing that, we would go ahead and we would reboot normally. Okay? So this is the process that we would take in order to do an authoritative restore. First, we're going to do a full system state recovery. Then we're going to authoritatively restore the user account or an entire OU. And remember, for a single object, you just type in simply restore object. For an entire OU, you type restore subtree. Okay? All right, so now you know the basics of what we're going to do. You know the situation. Let's go ahead and let's move on over to DC2. And we're actually going to put all the stuff into practice so you can see exactly what an authoritative restore actually looks like. All right, so here we are over on DC2, and you notice that we are currently in the Server Manager underneath Active Directory Domain Services, Active Directory Users and Computers, and here we are in NY Users. Now notice that we do have Brock Sampson's account here. Let's go ahead and let's right click and let's disable that account real quick, just in case he does get out of jail and somehow ends up back on the premises. We don't want him logging back in and messing stuff around. What worries me more is that Brock Sampson was only a member of the account operators group, so somehow he seemed to have grabbed administrative credentials. So we might want to go through and change a few passwords too along the way, including the administrator's account. But for the time being, what we need to worry about is the fact that the ops group is gone. We have our sales, we have executives, but the ops OU that we created does not exist. Now again, we could do a non-authoritative restore, right? We could go to the storage section of the Server Manager, and we could go into the Windows Server Backup, and what we could do is we could do a very simple recovery from the last scheduled backup where we're pretty sure that deletion didn't happen. Now we know from our security log that the deletion happened somewhere around 1 a.m. And if you remember right, we set up our scheduled backups to run at midnight every night, right? So we could go ahead and click on recover, and we could actually go into the last section and we could actually do a quick non-authoritative recover or restore. However, remember that the other domain controllers also think that this OU is deleted, and they have definitely had time to replicate. So that's not really what we want to do at this point in time. So we're going to do an authoritative restore. And first of all, what we need to do, we need to restart our machine. Now, when we restart our machine, we'll go ahead and we'll put in a quick comment here, recovery for ops OU. When we restart our machine, we want to hold down the F8 key during the reboot process so that we can get the option to reboot into directory restore mode or directory services restore mode. It is probably important to remember that you are going to experience some outages, at least at some level. Remember that DC2 is also our primary domain controller emulator, and so there's going to be probably some issues. All right, so we're going to go here to Directory Services Restore Mode. I just held down the F8 key during that reboot process, okay? Oh, and I probably should mention also that at this point in time, we do have two other domain controllers, remember. Okay, so other users are still going to be able to log in. The ops users aren't going to be able to log in because there's a significant chance that the other domain controllers have all replicated and have marked those objects as deleted. But the other users will still be able to go ahead and be able to log on A-OK because we do have those other two domain controllers. So we're going to maybe see some interruption in some services, but not in everything, okay? And that's a good reason to have more than one domain controller running in your network. If one domain controller goes down, people can still log in using that second domain controller. All right, so now we need to go ahead and we need to log in. And remember, we need to log in very specifically as /administrator. And now we need to put in the Directory Services Restore Mode password that we set up back during DC promo. And it's this very specific special login that's going to allow us to go in and do restorations. And now this should get us into the domain services recovery mode. And I do want you to remember that even though you did change the password or you changed the administrator account right to Supercoach or whatever it is that you changed it to, in order to get into directory services restore mode, like what we're doing here, we need to use /administrator, okay? No matter what your regular enterprise administrator account login name actually is. All right, so we can go ahead and let's reduce the server manager item here because we don't need it. We're going to be doing everything in the command prompt. All right, now the first thing we need to do is we need to go into wb-admin and we're going to type get versions. And I could, by the way, I could go ahead and type in the backup target location, but it's actually not necessary because it's actually going to go through the entire machine and find out where all of our backups actually are. And see, here's all of our backups. Now, most of these you're going to see are actually full backups performed at midnight every night. Okay, you see here there's one system state backup. Now we could use this one if we wanted to. This was done at 1:54 p.m. today, but we could also use this one. This was a full backup done for us by our Windows Server backup scheduler that we set up earlier. So let's go ahead and let's use this one. Why not? Because system state is available in it. You can just see where it says can recover volumes, files, applications, bare metal recovery, system state. So here's the version identifier that we actually need to use for our restoration. 08/14/2008-04:01. All right, so pretty easy. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a WB admin space start system state recovery space version ID space actually colon 08/14/2008-04:01. And when I hit enter, oh, wait a minute. Didn't quite finish that one correct, did I? Okay, well, let's try that one more time here. Let me go ahead and hit the up arrow key to recover that last command. And, oh, I know what I did wrong. We need to take out ID. Okay, well, let's see how we do now. Nope, still didn't get it right, did I? Because I didn't put in a space. All right, hit the enter key. Let's see how we did this time. And notice that I did not put in the backup location. Now, if your backup is in a different location altogether, you need to put in the UNC path. You know, like E:/ and the folder that it's in and all that. Well, they need to do that. But since the backup that I'm using is actually on this machine in an attached hard drive, then I don't need to do that, okay? But if your backup is in a network attached storage location, that's a different story. All right, I'm going to tell it yes because I do want to start the system state recovery operation and hit the enter key. And now I just sit back and let it do its thing. So again, just as a quick review, what we're doing is we're actually bringing back the Active Directory. So that way our objects are actually intact. Now once the Active Directory is brought back, then we mark that one OU as authoritative by using the NTDS util and making that update sequence number for that organizational unit. And by the way, it does also mark the update sequence number for all of the user accounts inside of it as well. It also brings those USNs up also. So you don't have to worry about restoring each and every single one of the user accounts, just so you know, okay? Now this one's going to take a while, so I'm going to pause the video recording while this guy finishes doing its recovery process. And then as soon as it's done, I'll be back. And then what we'll do is we'll actually go in and do that NTDS util authoritative restore. So we finally gotten through the restoration process, and boy, I tell you, it did take quite a long while for that. So now what we're ready to do is actually do the authoritative restore process. Now, the first thing we need to do is we need to go into NTDS util. And then we need to go ahead and always do our favorite first command, activate instance NTDS. All right, and now we type in the context we're going to be moving into, which is authoritative restore. There we go. All right, so now if we want to type in here help real quick, it'll actually tell us exactly what we need to do. So we're going to actually be using, I'll go ahead and kind of point it out here, we're going to be doing the restore subtree, okay? We're not going to be restoring individual objects. This is, remember, if you only want to restore an individual account, you would use this. But if you want to restore an entire OU, we need to use the subtree option. So I'm going to type in here, restore subtree. And now I need to put in the distinguished name. Okay. Now the distinguished name is OU equals ops, comma, DC equals globalmantics, comma, DC equals com. Let's see how we do. Are you sure you want to perform this authoritative restore? Yes, I am. Let's see, do we find it? No, we did not. Why? Because I didn't type in the full name. I just typed in the OU name. All right, so we have to go again. Restore, subtree, quotes. Now it is ops, but we have to also make sure we remember to put in all of the rest of the distinguished name. So we also need OU equals New York users, comma, OU equals New York OU, comma. And I think that pretty much gives us everything. We have the ops as the child OU. Remember, the child always goes first, right? Then the parents, New York users, check. New York OU, yes. Okay, now we put in the DC equals Globomantics, comma, DC equals com, and the quotes. All right, now we hit the enter key. Are you sure? I'm going to move over to yes with the arrow keys and press the enter key to tell it yes. And looks like I still didn't get the right thing, did I? What did I mess up here? I messed up the OU equals New York users. See how this is all very, very critical. The naming conventions and the distinguished name is a very important thing to wrap your head around. If you give even just a little bit of it incorrect, Windows Server isn't going to be very happy with you. So I made sure that I had NY users instead of New York users and pressed the enter key. Are we sure? Yes, we are. And there we go. So once I had my OU name correct, once I had the distinguished name correct, then everything worked A-OK. You notice here I found 42 records to update in terms of all the stuff that was in that organizational unit. All right, now one thing I wanted to kind of point you towards right now is the actual list of the objects that were authoritatively restored. And there's actually a file in the directory that we're in. I'll show you that in just a second here. Of the objects that were actually restored. And also there's a thing down here called an LDIF file. Okay. Now if you're in a Server 2008 or Server 2003 functional level domain, you don't have to worry about this. But if you're in a Windows 2000 domain, this is something that you do have to worry about, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later in this video. But right now, our process has actually been completed. And so now we can go ahead and we can quit and quit. And now let's take a look in the current directory that we are in. Here are the files that it created here for us. And if we so desired, we could actually go take a look at them. So if I go to the Start menu and I go to the Administrator files, here they are right here. And so if I wanted to open up the LDIF file just so you see what it actually looks like, I'm going to select the Notepad file just so you see what it actually is. Now this LDIF file actually contains what we call backlinks, and backlinks allow you to restore membership in groups if you're running in a Server 2000 functional level environment. Remember, if you're running in a Server 2003 or Server 2008 functional level, you don't have to worry about this so much, okay? We can also take a quick look at the objects that we actually did recreate. Here's a list of those objects, just in case you wanted to know what they look like, what they are. All right, let's go ahead and close that out. And let's open up these other two here. You notice here that there's nothing in these. These are my two failed attempts because I actually didn't type in my organizational unit distinguished name correctly the first two rounds. And yes, that was on purpose, just so you know. Just so you can see that, how important the distinguished name actually is. All right, well, you know what? We are ready now to go ahead and restart our machine regularly. So let's go ahead and let's go to the Start menu and let's do a quick restart. We're going to reboot this thing, and we'll just put in a quick comment here after restoration of New York Ops OU, right? Okay, there we go, and we'll tell it okay. So I'm going to let this thing reboot, and then as soon as it does, I'll come right back. All right, so we have rebooted our server here. Let's go ahead and let's log in regularly as SuperCoach. And again, I just restarted the server normally. I didn't do anything special with it this time around. Now, what we're expecting to see is the Ops organizational unit restored, and we'll also go in, we'll take a look at the update sequence number and see what that looks like as well. Now, the nice thing about this particular process is that in order for the restored organizational unit and all of the accounts therein have been restored, they'll all replicate out to the other domain controllers. All right, so it's telling me here that I need to go ahead and press enter to complete the system state recovery. That'll be fine. Go ahead and do your magic Server 2008 and we'll go ahead and we'll see how we did. And here comes our server manager back up. And let's go ahead and let's see if we can get into the roles section here. Might take just a minute or two for it to finish up loading up all of the MMCs and such. And while this guy is loading up, I do want to emphasize that if it's only a singular user account, you may or may not want to go through this whole entire restore process. Depending upon what kind of access, what kind of stuff is happening with that user account, quite frankly, it might actually be faster to restore or actually just simply create a brand new account. Now, if there's all kinds of other considerations like email access and all that other stuff, well, then it's a different story, okay? But if you have a very simplistic network setup and there isn't email integration via Microsoft Exchange server, stuff like that, then obviously you can go ahead and just simply recreate. All right, there we go. Let's go into Active Directory Domain Services here and into Active Directory Users and Computers. Now, one thing to note that once we bring it back, we may want to go back and check our services to make sure everything is running okay. We'll do that here in just a minute. First of all, I want to see if our ops OU actually did come back. So I'm going to go here into NY Users. And oh, thank heavens, there it is. All right, so I'm going to actually turn on the Advanced Features item here from the View menu. So that way I can see the update sequence number. I won't be able to see that, by the way, if I don't have the advanced features turned on. So let's go into NY Users here. And now we'll take a look at the Ops Organizational Units. And we'll go into its properties to find that update sequence number that I was telling you about just now. Now, it might be that your machine might act and run a little slowly right after the restoration process. Remember that it is doing work to replicate the changes back out to the rest of the domain controllers. And there we go. Let's go to the Object tab. And now you'll see here was the original update sequence number. And look at the current update sequence number. Actually, it's a lot more than 10,000, isn't it, in this instance? So this higher value marks this particular organizational unit as authoritative, and that all of the other domain controllers should use this particular organizational unit as authoritative, as being the most important, and to replicate stuff that is in here. Let's go ahead and let's cancel out of that now. I'm going to go into the Ops folder and let's make sure that our users actually did come over. That's always a good thing. And it is kind of going a little slow due to the restoration process. The thing about the system state restore is that not only did we simply do an authoritative restore on these particular items, but we also did a full complete system restore for everything. So now our domain controller is trying to catch up with everything else. All right, so here they are. All right, good deal. If we wanted to take a look at the update sequence number for any of our users, we could go ahead and we could do that by right-clicking and going to their properties here as well. And we'll go to the Object tab, and once again you'll notice here's the original value and here is the new value. Our domain controller really made sure that this is authoritative by increasing it by a whole lot more than 10,000 in this instance. All right, so we're pretty good now. We're probably will have to wait just a little bit while the domain controller replicates these new user groups or the new user accounts, because they they're kind of new, even though they've been restored out of the system state restoration process. So it might take a little while for this domain controller to catch up. But other than that, friends, I mean, we were successful in bringing back the ops department in New York back from the dead, although really what we did, we just simply undeleted them. All right, so let's go ahead and let's go back to the slides now. I want to talk to you just a little bit about something that's going to be important to you if, for some weird reason, your Server 2008 domain controller is still running under a Server 2000 functional level. Right, now, again, this is mostly stuff for your certification exam. Okay, and maybe for some weird reason, if you happen to be in this situation for your corporation. In Server 2003 and Server 2008, if you're running at that functional level, when we do an authoritative restore, NTDS util uses what we call linked value replication. And what that does is it restores group membership to all of our deleted accounts. Even though I didn't show you that our group accounts were actually restored, or our group membership was restored back to our users, they are, and you could, if you've been following along at home, you could go back and check that for yourself. So, I mean, if you're in that kind of environment, Server 2003, Server 2008 functional level for your domain, you don't have to worry about the group memberships. They're going to be okay and still intact. When you do an authoritative restore in Server 2000 functional level, you end up losing those group memberships on all of your user accounts. Now, you could go back and you could recreate them manually, and if you're only bringing back, say, 10 or 12 users and a couple of groups, then that's fine. But if you're bringing back, say, thousands of users, you don't have that kind of time. But fortunately, we have a functionality that we can go back and use using those LDIF files that I was talking with you about when we were back in the demo section. Because during the authoritative restore, there's a file called the LDIF file that is created. You could use this file to restore group memberships to all the users quickly by using what we call backlinks from that LDIF file. So in order to do this process, and again, you won't need to do it if you're in a Server 2003 and Server 2008 functional level. You will only need to do this if you're in a Server 2000 functional level. So here's the process real quickly. I can't show this to you, just so you know, because we're running Server 2008 functional level, right? So I do want to just talk you through it real quick. It's really easy. After you do an authoritative restore, your DC has been restarted, you're going to go back and open up a command prompt. You're going to type this, repadmin/syncall, put in the name of your DC that you just restored. You're going to put in /a/d/a/p/q. Okay? Then you're going to change to the directory where your LDIF files ended up. And I've shown you how to get to that, by the way. If you need to rewind the video a little bit to see where they're at, go ahead and do that. And then you type ldifty. That's a kind of a funny word, huh? ldifty-i-k-f, and then the file name, where the file name is that LDIF file that I just showed you, by the way, that contains the backlinks for that particular set of users. And by the way, there may be more than one LDIF file, so you might need to rinse and repeat step number 3 for each file that was created by NTDS util. Again, you know, it's a very simple process. Basically, you just do a sync all, and then you bring in all of the backlinks using the ldifty command. But again, if you are not running a Server 2000 functional level in your domain and you're at least Server 2003, you can ignore this, okay? This is just for exam stuff. Just in case you happen to get hit with that, or you end up in real life in a Server 2000 functional level, even though you might have a Server 2008 domain controller. Not very likely, but it's possible, I suppose. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's do some wrap up here. Let's talk about some really big words. Authoritative restore. Now, this is a process in which objects or an entire directory can be restored and marked as authoritative by increasing the update sequence number by at least 10,000, although what we saw was a lot higher than 10,000, right? To let all other domain controllers know to use this object when they're replicating, when they're talking back and forth and sharing information. Now, a non-authoritative restore is a very simple restoration process that can be accomplished by using Windows Server Backup. But by the way, I should probably let you know, you can also do a directory restore mode, and you could do that wb-admin command, where basically all we did was just did a system state recovery. So if you wanted to do that as your non-authoritative restore, you can. And really, this is really for if there's been too much lag time and your domain controllers have replicated out those deletions. Now, if you catch it in time, you might be able to get away with a non-authoritative restore. But chances are you're probably going to be doing more so authoritative restores when stuff gets trashed. All right, the update sequence number. It's a value in an Active Directory object that helps domain controllers know which objects need to be updated in the directory during replication, right? And linked value replication. I've talked to you about this a little bit, but basically what it is, it's a magical process. It's available in the Server 2003 or 2008 functional level domains that restores group membership back to restored accounts automatically, so you don't have to mess around with that ldifty command. Okay? All right, so what we covered after viewing this video, you should be able to perform a non-authoritative restore using Windows Server Backup on a domain controller. And you saw that that's just going back to the Windows Backup command module, right? And we just hit the recover button. Although we didn't do that for ours, right? What we did is we did an authoritative restore using Directory Services Restore mode. And we used wbadmin and the ntdsutil commands. And you should also be able to do the restoration of group membership from backlinks using ldifty, okay? Because it's a very simple process, right? It's only 2 commands. So you should be able to use my instructor notes if you find yourself in that situation to make that happen, okay? All right, well, friends, that wraps up this particular video. So take a short break, and I will see you in the next one.